Hello, this is Imogen Caterer and Gordon Faulkner, and we're here to talk about healing, healing by looking to our common humanity. Certainly not healing by posting on Facebook, as far as I can tell this evening, because I've been busy for the last few minutes. Let me introduce you to Gordon. Actually, Gordon, you're
Hello.
much better introducing yourself than I am, so.
Um, Hello, I'm Gordon, and welcome to our webinar. I wish people could have seen the trying to organize the technology, the video of
Oh, no.
bustling around, and it was quite an adventure trying to get everything in line. I'm looking forward to this chat.
Hello?
Hello, Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got a technical problem, like I got talked to in two different ways by myself just then. Yeah. The known problem if you've got some YouTube videos open. Right. Okay. So let me just sort of begin the theme of this evening. For me, this kind of comes out of some insights I've been having recently, particularly we're both Supercoach Academy students, Michael Neal Supercoach Academy, and particularly came out of the New York weekend, just how there's an essence to our humanity, and yet we tend to focus on labels, and my particular interest over the years has been in psychiatric labels such as depression, schizophrenia, what have you. But we're also we tend to approach almost anyone that we've met before, and in fact even people that we haven't met before, with a certain amount of assumptions going on, and how that thought and thinking can actually block us relating to somebody from the heart, and that causes a number of problems, and it causes our basic sense of disconnection, and that sense of disconnection fuels things like racism, sexism, ageism, just tensions really, because we all have times when we're in a bad mood, but if somebody's in a bad mood once and then you have thinking and assumptions about that, then in your mind they stay in the bad mood forever. And that produces barriers that stops us really connecting.
May I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm loving this. I'm loving this topic. It's as far as I'm concerned, this wisdom or inner wisdom for experiencing good relationships or experiencing health and well-being, it all comes from a place that doesn't have labels. It's when I was a young boy, I was very healthy. I had quite a healthy childhood. So I was physically healthy. I was mentally, emotionally healthy. It wasn't until I started. Strangely enough, it wasn't until I started reading about psychology and health and just filling my mind with all these ideas about what was the right thing to do to be healthy, what was the right thing to do to be emotionally healthy. It wasn't until then until I actually started experiencing a thing called anxiety or depression. Before that, before I had any labels for the way people were, I was in the flow of life. I remember being very healthy, very happy most of the time as a child. And then I started to learn about all the things that were supposedly wrong with people, why they were the way they were, why I was the way I was. And in some ways that reinforced the low times or the anxious thoughts. And I obsessed over ways that I could try and fix myself, which again reinforced it. So I identified with this thing called anxiety. That was the label I gave myself, and some people gave me, depression, and relationship issues, all sorts of different issues. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I started really seeing what all that was, and it was just thought. It was just extra thought. And when I began to see that that was just extra thought, something woke up inside me. I began to pay attention to that wisdom that was always there, and I began to live more like I did as a child, which was just in my freedom, in my wisdom, in the flow of life. And my life is completely transformed as a result of recognizing that all that label, although there may be some use for it at times, it's just a lot of thought. And yeah. And I say there may be some use because, like I say, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a licensed doctor, and there is a place for that. But I've seen again and again and again, especially with people I'm coaching, that when they over-identify with the labels they've either given themselves or they've been given, it adds extra stress, it adds extra anxiety. When they recognize that it's just a thought, and underneath that thought there's wisdom available to them, then the label doesn't have so much, it might still be useful, but it doesn't have so much power over them anymore. A negative influence. So yeah, it's changed my life, this idea of what we're pointing to in this conversation, this common humanity, and recognizing what labels actually are. Yeah.
Yes, I remember going to a support group who had this thing about, oh, we don't use labels. Mildly irritating as a speaker or a workshop leader as I was that time, because they extended that to the point they wouldn't put sticky labels on saying somebody's name, which I thought was just a bit extreme. It was a very good group in many ways, but I did think that was a bit extreme. And I think one of the issues, you get this with depression, is the anti-stigma movement for depression is it's a real disease. It's not. There are real people suffering from it. It doesn't emphasize the humanity. It emphasizes the disease.
And it's funny because when I think of, I went through a couple of years in my life where I was really depressed. It was 3-4 years ago, and I was seeing a counselor, and I almost applied for assistance with the government because I was in such a low state, and they were kind of giving me these labels of post-traumatic stress or depression, and there's something part of me liked it. It was like, oh, now I know what I have. But there was my instinct kind of said, no, there's something else. It's a huge, in my experience, in my life, and I can only speak from my life, the label of depression is a huge generalization. I mean, there's so many variables as to like low state of mind, low blood sugar, physical health, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes when I was the most, I had an experience a few years ago when I had a really low day. I was really depressed and down for maybe a day or two, and I had recognized in an instant that the day before that I had had a whole bunch of caffeine and sugar, and which I don't usually drink caffeine or sugar. And in that instant, I recognized I just had really low blood sugar that day. I was going through like a caffeine withdrawal or something. And as soon as I realized that, it wasn't depression anymore. I was like, wow, I just need a nap, or I need to drink some water. In that instant, I saw that label of depression go right to like, oh, it's just low blood sugar. Let me drink some water and have a nap, and my body will reset itself. And I felt wonderful. So how many times do people have physical sensations due to whatever, and then they have an idea of what that is, but then they latch on to this idea, and that becomes their identity. For me, that was true with anxiety, with depression, with all sorts of things that if I had just let it be, I would flow through the experience, and get on with my life. So for me, when I was talking to these people, these professionals, about my experience, in my mind it reinforced that label. And then it wasn't until I started talking to some people around this inside-out understanding, some of the psychologists that were teaching the three principles approach, that I really woke up to the fact that that label was just thought, and then underneath there was a wisdom that would guide me, an instinct for health and well-being. So, yeah, it's.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to hook on to a label, and make it yourself. And I think it's definitely happened to me in my life. I mean, I was hospitalised back in the year 2000. What got called, bipolar disorder, manic phase, and it was. I got myself out of manic phase at one point by swallowing a whole set of B vitamins, and it was clearly largely a vitamin deficiency, but it didn't. It seemed to be a bit more complicated than the physical side, and I had little bits of lows and things like that. So then I started buying into the label, and just got hooked and stuck on it, and hooked and stuck on the whole topic. It took me, ages to really move away from it, and move away from a sense that because I'd done well in the B vitamins, I had to kind of tell the world what I'd found. And it's been a journey for me to drop it. I was facilitating a support group for people with bipolar, and it really wasn't getting anywhere. It wasn't very positive at all. And I was slowly, getting to the point where I began to understand this stuff. I understand some of it, but I didn't, twig just how powerful it is on labels, I suppose. And I got more and more more and more aware that I'm not bipolar, that it is in a sense of construction. But what I didn't yet see was just getting really keen and hooked into the idea that we're just human, that I'm just human like anyone else.
Wow.
Once you begin to see that, it really kind of felt like sort of the whole area of my consciousness kind of blew round about here. And I suddenly went, wow, I can see freedom. I think one of the interesting applications of this is to look at what we take personally and what we take impersonally. And it's arguably one of the top tests of how well a coaching client's going, or how well an individual is going on, whether they're taking life personally, which would be bad news in general, or whether they're taking it impersonally. So whether they're being philosophical about this. I remember one coach dealing with a caller who's an actress, I think, and she didn't want to do the office work. And he said, all of us as people occasionally have to do stuff we don't want to do. And if you take it personally, you add to your suffering. And if you don't take it personally, then you don't add to your suffering. And it's simple as that in many cases. People taking stuff personally, have problems. And I remember I've had a job application in, and I'd applied for it, and I was working in a department where the decision was going to be made. And I went through stages of taking it personally, if I made any mistake, it's kind of, oh, no, they might find out, the managers might find out, and that will be counted against me. And I was in that taking it personally state. Mm-hmm. And then I came out of it. After a bit, I sort of realised what I was doing. Realised I was taking the world terribly seriously, and realising that I was going, oh, they must be marking my application right now, when actually they're doing something else. And when I stopped taking that whole thing so personally, I relaxed out of it. And even though I heard a manager say, we haven't done the marking yet, I was assuming that they had done the marking yet and I hadn't got it. Even though I had that experience, I then was kind of, well, I know you now, Unchen. Okay, you got stressed about this before, and there was nothing to it. And so I couldn't really get stressed about it again.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. It's huge. It's huge. It's something popped into my mind as you were sharing that about this. I'm glad you're bringing this up about this personal versus impersonal nature. And a lot of my anxiety that I experienced in the past was taking things personally. It was seeing behavior of other people and then thinking that had to do with me. And the big piece for me that allowed me to not take things so personally was seeing that any time a person had a thought or an experience about me, they weren't actually really connected to me. They were connected to their thinking. They're relating to their thoughts of me. So they're creating their own experience of me through their thinking. And to me, just seeing that in the last few years while in coaching conversation with people around this inside-out nature, just seeing that allowed me to experience that we all do this. It's what we all have in common. We're with each other, and then we represent each other in our minds, and then we give ourselves a feeling of that other person. And we think that feeling is that person when it's not. That person is what I started feeling was this deeper connection with everyone. If we're all doing that, if we're all creating an experience of other people in our own minds, then in some ways this is what we all have in common. And so I started actually just feeling a deeper connection with others naturally. So I felt less attached to the labels that I was giving myself or that I'd been given, and more human, more like I had something in common. And when you shared that story, it reminded me kind of how I began to see things differently. Is what we all have in common. And I was curious. I wanted to ask you, like, what was the first time? Do you remember the first time that you just you realized there was something more than just this label that had been given me? There was something of value to looking in a different direction about this common humanity that we're talking about, or your innate well-being. Do you remember the first moment where just something clicked for you?
I had a few stages. I was listening to Michael Neill's Hay House Radio, and it did come in a few stages, a few insights that kind of got through about something deeper going on, about looking within. It came through in stages. What really made it for me, but I think also has some disadvantages, is that I after a bit, I was just listening to Michael Mills at Hairspray. I didn't have anything much else to do. I think I was unemployed at the time, and I listened to them. And then one time I just went and had a bath. It was 23rd of December 2012. So you can imagine, I remember the date. So probably quite specific. And I went and had a bath, and I know what I'd also been doing is I've been practicing EFT. And you know, I stress this is an example of EFT not being used well. I'm not making a generalisation about EFT, but I was trying to push it and trying to get rid of. I had quite a lot of anger at the time, and I was trying to clear it using EFT, and I was starting screaming. You know, as I focused in on the anger. So that had been what I'd done in the morning. You know, early morning, 7 a.m. or something. I was screaming. And then in the afternoon or evening, I went and had this bath. Took Michael Neal with me. Or rather, took his audio with me. And I listened to it. I don't remember which radio program or what was the key thing. But suddenly, I really got something. And the thing I was so angry about just fit inside out or something. I jokingly say that my anger went down the plug hole. It was basically seeing that I made the whole thing up. But not in a downer on myself kind of way. But in a, I don't know, just the liberation of truth, I suppose. And I stayed there for a few days. It was really blissful. And then my darn thinking came in, and I thought myself back into a certain amount of anger with it. And I still have some issues around it, because I've got a blank spot around it. It is the one, you know, there are probably others actually, but you know, I talk about the inside-out experience, and you know, how we generate our stuff within, and then I'll talk about that job which I got so angry in, and you can hear I can hear my words split round to kind of nothing else I could do. They were just pushing it now. There certainly was a problem that I was being given more work than anyone could conceivably do in the time. But that doesn't mean that the huge amount of emotional reaction I produced at the time was inevitable. So what I have done since is I've had various insights that have lessened this. And now I only seem to go down that thinking route when there's a job issue going on. When it looks like I'm not going to have, basically it looks like I'm not going to have a job. That one does seem to get me. I obviously have persistent thinking about that. That goes back to that job, and has massive assumptions in there about if it worked better, I've done better. And if you look at it now, right now, and the state I'm in right now, that's rubbish. You know, I got as much experience out of that job as I could. You know, but what it showed me is the tremendous potential power of this. And I have never looked back from it. Yeah, I'm still, you know, I used to be I still am a trained nutrition consultant, but I mean, I used to be a nutrition consultant. I used to be a practicing nutrition consultant, doing, you know, really quite well treating mental health conditions. Do I still believe nutrition helps? Yes, I do, but I think what's really going on in many cases, people are having a lot of mental strain going on. They're thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And there's a whole biochemical cascade, stress-related cascade, knock out your immune system, your digestive system, ghastly things as well. And nutrition can help stop that, or can help reduce that damage. But you're much better going in with the thinking. You might want it going on and start sort of seeing through and seeing the real nature of thought. You might want to use nutrients in the meantime to help somebody who's, you know, in a grim condition. You know, Dr. Bill Pettit of Michigan, who's a superstar at this sort of stuff, really. Not a well-known superstar, unfortunately. That characteristics kind of passed it by. But, you know, he used drugs for a bit. And I think when you really sat down with people with psychiatric conditions in the extreme end, you can kind of see why. That he wants to give them, in a sense, a certain amount of temporary protection with drugs. And you know, I know the criticism of psych drugs very well, but you know, the key thing he goes for, with great success, is to look at the role of thought. And to say, well, you've got this innate well-being, which he totally believes in. I remember somebody introducing him, George Bransky, introducing him and saying, you know, one definition of infinity is the number of times you would have to tell Dr. Bill Pettit that you are mentally ill for him to believe you. Because he sees that innate well-being, you know, deep within. And that's why he's stellar at saying, hey, you are 100% healthy. It is just thought is distorting your perceptions. And that isn't just the thought that you allegedly have a diagnosis. It's the thought that drags up the past and churns it round and round and round and triggers this stress response.
I love that. And there's, I mean, everything you shared there, there's so many pieces that kind of popped out for me. That, especially when you were talking about that, you said it, that original insight when you were in the bath and everything flipped the other way around. And I just want to, for those that are listening that might not know about what EFT is, I'll just do it. It's an emotional release technique where you stimulate the acupuncture meridian points. I'm very familiar with it, and it's used to desensitize the body to stressful thoughts. So it's a therapy tool, and I've used it in the past. I've used it with clients. Sometimes very effective, sometimes not so effective. But what really amazes me, and what really drew me into this inside-out understanding and the three principles approach, was I experienced such a powerful shift, and it feels to me like it was everything flipped inside out, where I saw that my stress was actually coming from the inside. It was coming from thought in the moment. It actually wasn't an environmental factor. And for me, the shift was so big that it actually released levels of stress that used to create physical illness in my body. Because I've had, in the past, I suffered, when I was in depression and anxiety, I also suffered with digestive issues that were sometimes so bad that I couldn't leave the house. And the therapeutic and the nutritional stuff, it shifted. Sometimes it helped a lot. The EFT helped a lot in specific times and circumstances. The nutrition helped a lot in specific times and circumstances. But what really amazed me was how effective just being in conversation, looking and having someone reflect with me about the fact that I was only ever feeling my thinking. Like stress comes from thought. For me, when I woke up to that, it was as powerful as the nutrition therapy, as powerful as the EFT therapy, as powerful as the hypnosis, because I did hypnosis in the past. I practiced it, and I got hypnosis done on me. It was as powerful. Seeing the nature of thought for me actually had physiological effects on my body, like digestive issues lessened, improved 80%. And when I first started having conversations with people about the three principles, my digestive issues cleared. 80% of them disappeared. 80% of the trouble disappeared. And before, in the past, when I was applying like therapy tools and nutrition, it would help maybe 60%, 50 to 60% of my issues would disappear. When I started seeing that it was thought that created stress in the moment, and when I stopped trying to go into the past and resolve issues, or when I stopped trying to fix myself and just be with what was in the moment, 80% of my physical issues disappeared. And so, as people listen to this webinar, of course, I'm very curious. It's like what people are going through. What do they want to see in their lives? What do they want to experience more of? Because it's probably to do with well-being, relationships, health, maybe money issues. I have no idea, but what me and Imogen are talking about is something that we all have in common. And that when we see this, life becomes easier. It has for us, it has for the clients we work with. When we see that it's thought that creates stress, and that underneath that thinking there's a wisdom or an instinct for well-being, then this is where I see people's lives in relationship and health and well-being totally transform when they see the simplicity of this. And it's my hope that as we share this, if someone does have a serious label, that they like, I'm not here to take that away. I'm not here to say that we know better, but I'm here just to say that maybe there's a wisdom inside people that can work alongside the doctors they're working with, because doctors and psychologists, they all have good intentions. They want to help their patients. I would hope that people would listen to this information and just see how it fits in with their life, and see see if it sparks a curiosity to look within. Yeah.
We've got the question that you typed in earlier, Gordon. We haven't really called for questions yet. If anyone's got any questions, we're very delighted to hear them. It's just we've only just got to the question page. I thought we'd warm to our theme, but I didn't think we'd warm to our theme for about 30 minutes first. But
yeah, there's a question from a friend of mine who she was unable to make the webinar because she's at work, and so she emailed me the question. We could read that out and address that.
Yeah, go for it.
So this is from a friend of mine who's been doing some coaching with. I've been doing some coaching with her around this inside-out understanding and the three principles. And she's beginning to see how thought creates her experience of life. And there's a lot of areas in her life that seem to be opening up. She's beginning to experience a bit more freedom. But she's wanting a deeper understanding of these three principles. So she just says, I guess I'm looking for things that are all constant within us that would allow me to back out of my own thought and see more clearly. I feel I have a lot of intellectual understanding, and I'm still waiting for an understanding from a deeper level of consciousness.
Mm.
So I told her the theme of our webinar, that it's about, she knows it's about this common humanity and finding something that's constant within us. She understands intellectually the principles, which I'll speak to right now. Briefly, thought being the creative potential that gives us the experience of life. Mind, which is the bigger energy behind life that gives us everything. I like to think of it as wisdom or nature. And consciousness, which is just our present level awareness. It's what brings it all to life. And so for Naomi, who asked this question, I can relate to her. She's when we're in the state of mind of trying to intellectually understand something that's already a part of us, or trying to search for something that's already a part of us, it can seem like we don't have a deep understanding. But for me, the biggest insights I've gotten around the three principles and around this deeper wisdom or innate health and well-being have been when I've stopped looking outside of me, or stopped even trying to find an intellectual answer, and I've woken up to the present moment, what's actually occurring in the moment. And it's often during either self-reflection or while I'm in conversation with someone around the principles. If they ask me a really good question that has me look inside, I often joke with my friend Naomi because she's been talking about going on holiday for a while. She just for the last few months, oh, it would be wonderful just to go on holiday. And I often mention to her, like, I bet you if you just went on holiday and had a relax and just went and relaxed on the beach for a week, you'd have more insights than 3 months of trying to consciously figure them out. So my only suggestion to people that want a deeper understanding of their own innate well-being or the three principles is to go on holiday in your regular life. Like, take a break from trying to figure it out, and do what it is you know to do to get present, to get more in touch with this present moment. And for me, I love to go for long walks. I love to have conversations about the principles. I love coaching people. For me, that's like holiday when I'm coaching people. It's like, it feels like a holiday because I'm not trying to figure anything out. I'm not trying to force them to have any new kind of thinking. I'm just present to what's occurring in the moment. And then when we become present to what's occurring in the moment, in my experience, we feel the principles at work. We feel thought creating emotion, and we feel this deeper energy behind life, and we feel our consciousness moving in and giving us the experience of where our consciousness is. Consciousness can be in your head, just in your thoughts. It can be in your whole body. Your consciousness can expand outside of your body. In my experience, you can become conscious of this deeper energy that you're connected to. So I know it's a very general way to answer that question, but it's just give up, go on holiday in your regular life. Just go on holiday from trying to figure things out, and you'll see a lot more when you're not actually using so much effort to look. I hope that helps Naomi. She'll be listening to this after the recording. I hope that helps, and I look forward to chatting again soon with her. So yeah.
Yeah, we so need to sort of chill out and don't half push ourselves often. Just felt groggy this afternoon and went, just go to sleep.
Yeah, well, when you first had your big insight where you said things flipped inside out, where you started to see it was thought, and you just really relaxed. You were just having a bath, you said.
Yeah.
Just having a bath. And you were listening to Michael Neal.
And blow me, it had loads of chances to happen when I wasn't in the bar.
Yeah.
You know, I was listening to Michael Neal. I was in a relatively relaxed state. It was only when I was doing, probably my all-time favourite activity that it came on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, no, that was really good. Yeah, and I think there's such a point in, I'm sure neither of us want to make a rule about how this should be done and how you become, more aware of your insights. There's a story that does the circles about in Three Principles World about talking to a group conference of business people and say, who has, most people have these moments of inspiration in their morning shower. And then a businessman comes up and says, well, how long should I say, to my people to shower for? You've kind of missed the point.
Yes. It's why I agree, like, we can have these insights to deeper well-being anywhere at any time. It doesn't take a prescribed activity. And the reason why it's because what gives us insights is from what we're actually made of, what our experience is made of. Insights come from within. I'm going to share a little bit about my past, about what I used to do in order to try and create insights. I used to do a lot of...
Come back to just a moment on that. Let's just expand this out a little bit more. That there are insights, and then there is also the fact we are genuinely guided, even without apparent insights, by mind.
Exactly.
It's very easy to get on the insight, put the insight focus on it. Because, we're both in Facebook groups that talk about this. And, you have to have an insight in order to post, generally. And then it looks like it's all about insights, when actually it's also about our underlying, just our connection, that we're guided as we just go along through our lives as well.
I'm glad you're bringing up this. The way I experience it now, more and more, is whether, sometimes when people talk about getting an insight, it's like trying to get something outside of them or achieve something. When I personally believe that the instinct or the guidance for well-being is always with us. It always has been, and it always will. There's a signal inside our body. We'll call it wisdom, call it instinct, call it gut feeling. There's a signal that's always guiding us. I agree. And we don't actually need wisdom. We don't need a new insight in order to experience this guidance, because it's always there with us. It always will be. And it always has been. And in the past, when I practiced, I had a lot of practices, meditation and self-help practices and EFT, and I practiced them religiously, trying to have a new insight, trying to have a new belief, trying to have a new thought. What I'm waking up to more and more as I am in conversation around these three principles is that wisdom is always with us. I saw it when I used to do therapy with others. People used to hire me to do the NLP and the hypnosis and the EFT. In almost every case where we were trying to find an old belief to work on or an old memory to resolve, which could happen quite quickly with some of those tools. In almost every case, before we got to resolving those issues, I would often have a conversation with them and see a little spark in their eye, see them light up and have a new thought or have an instinct about what they really wanted in their life. But because I thought I was supposed to go in there and fix something, I made them focus on the problem and then try and go in and resolve it. But I always saw these little impulses in them to speak to a new inspiration. And now what I do in conversation, in coaching conversation with people is I notice that. I notice their wisdom. I notice their impulse for new thought. I notice their instinct, and I reflect it back to them, and then they notice it more often. It's always there. It's always there.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Oh, no? I think I'm done.
Okay. I mean, just another example that kind of springs to mind is in a temp job once. I thought there was a matter that really needed raising with a manager, and I was a temp, so it didn't, it was a slightly difficult position with it. Oh, that's what I thought anyway. And I thought, well, should I send them an email? And even that seemed a bit sort of formal and, here's a problem, kind of. And then I started writing a Post-it sticker, and my hands were kind of shaking. And forget it. This is too loaded. And I think it was wisdom guiding me. I just thought, well, maybe it will just happen naturally during the day. And the guy just called me over, told me about the length of time my time that was like to be extended for. And then he told me something that was just a total lead in to me saying exactly what I felt needed to be said. And it was just wisdom had guided me not to push it. And it just came over kind of naturally. This is not a criticism of you. This is just, by the way, this would be worth knowing. And I saw him, in a few minutes taking action on the very topic that I'd raised at it. So, that is guidance, and there wasn't really obvious insight. There's just an awareness that the methods I'd previously been trying, either email or Post-it sticker, just weren't resonating with what I wanted to do.
I was pondering this the other day. This question popped into my mind. It was, what feels good? What naturally feels good to do? Like without a lot of extra thinking, without a lot of overanalyzing, in which I sometimes am really good at overanalyzing. I used to procrastinate a lot and overanalyze things. But for me, it's like what naturally feels good to do without a lot of extra thinking. And to me, that's wisdom. And to me, that's something we have in common with everyone. And then there's some people that pay attention to all their overthinking, and they don't pay attention to what naturally feels good for them. And then some people begin to recognize that a lot of that extra thinking can create tension, and it's just thought. And they can trust a deeper wisdom. A lot of the people I found for myself studying a lot of self-help modalities over the years. I used to think that, well, some people had wisdom and some people didn't, and then the people that didn't have wisdom, they had to work hard at trying to create the wisdom. They had to do all the meditations or the self-help practices. This is something that I would love to see more of, and I would love if other people saw more of, was that we all have this in common. We all have an instinct for well-being. We all have wisdom within us, and some people are more aware of it, and some people are less aware of it. Some people are more conscious of it. Some people are less conscious of it. So in this conversation about common humanity, and in how I know you do, because I've had some coaching conversations back and forth with you, which have been great, and I know I do as well, is what we what we aim to do is just bring people, wake people up to this wisdom that's inside of them, and as a result, what I've seen in my life and the people I've been coaching is greater health and greater well-being, and just an easier time in life for the most part. And it is what we all have in common. We all have this wisdom or instinct for, and we all have thought that can get in the way from time to time. But yeah, it's for me, recognizing this the common humanity that we all have wisdom has allowed me to relax into a deeper sense of connection with friends and family. I'm less judgmental. I'm less. I give less label. I don't label them so much as I used to, because I see the wisdom in their lives as well as my life. So it's been very helpful.
Yeah, and we've talked before at quite some length about the effect on relationships, and I mean particularly from a single perspective, because we're both single. Just getting less attached to any particular relationship and letting them grow, with greater freedom. Right now with me, there isn't a big romantic relationship, but there doesn't need to be for me right now. There's not a romantic relationship-shaped hole in me. That just isn't there. And what I have in terms of friendship is, a wide range of people that I talk to and connect to. And it's great. Get on very well with work colleagues. I don't have any right now, currently unemployed, but only I think briefly. Relationships have improved. It's not something that I sat there and watched. It's great how well my relationships are. But, there's certainly leagues better.
Wow. I love that, and the area of relationship in my life is the area where I've struggled the most, and then I've also I feel I've had the biggest insights, and it's where I'm enjoying the most in my life now. I used to work really hard at trying to create connection and create good relationships with all the communication techniques and the relating practices, and it was a lot of work, and it seemed to create some results. But the biggest inside-out flip, I'll share my first insight, one of my first biggest insights into the principles, and it relates to our common humanity, and how it completely changed my life and completely changed how I relate with people, or how I experience relationship with people. This was years ago, 3 years ago now, and I was really distraught. I was resentful. It was a few months after a relationship had ended, and I was really resentful and lonely and anxious, and this person who I thought was a friend of mine wasn't talking to me anymore, and she just ended the relationship, and it was actually on a Michael Neal radio show. I called in, and I said, how do I get over this woman? I'm full of anxiety, I'm full of stress and tension. I want it to stop. How do I get over her? And he simply says, well, first of all, you don't have to get over anything because you're not in anything. He says that the minute that you recognize that anxious feeling can only ever come from thought, then the thought will settle down. A new thought will come in, and you'll feel completely different. And he also went on to say that this intimacy or love or connection that you think that you would feel if circumstances were different, he says, that's your default. That's what happens when your mind settles down. You just feel connected. It's a default setting. So in that moment, I went from all this self-help knowledge about trying to create connection with people to realizing, well, connection is the default. You don't have to work on it. It's just there. And over the next few years after that insight, my friendships, my relationships with my family, dating, everything became more enjoyable, more deeper connections, more fun, without effort, because I began to experience things more aligned with how they actually work, and that is that we get this feeling of connection from within. It's not from how someone is behaving outside of us. It's our deep connection with them comes from within, and it's actually independent of how they're behaving. So for me, that's the biggest piece in the common humanity is experiencing this connection as the default setting, and that we all experience this connection from within. So when our thoughts aren't taking us out of it. So.
Yeah. And I think it is, relationships is obviously key to this. I remember years ago I used to have the priority, well, either my finance was first or my health was first, but it certainly wasn't relationships. That was an error by me. I mean, what percentage of our thinking is around people? Must be huge. So if we can get that thinking is an illusion, thinking is probably human created, whereas thought is probably a sort of spiritual created illusion. We can begin to see through it, and that is really powerful. One of the things I've begun to realise, or I've gone through, I realised it several months ago, I think, it's just how much of my thinking is pretty paranoid, really. And the truth was, I used to believe that before, and now it's just, here comes the usual load of tosh. They obviously don't like me and all that kind of stuff. As if that actually mattered, but it can seem like it matters at the time. I think getting the human connection right is it's not getting the human connection right. It's falling into that human connection. It's a question I think that probably does have knock-on effects on our health or whatever.
Very cool. Very cool. So we're at the hour mark. How long are we going on this webinar? Yeah.
We were just a tiny bit late, I suppose, so we can squeeze in a bit more.
Yeah.
Oh, let's just check the questions.
Yep.
Better check that. See what we've got. Once again, we forgot to call for them, but there you go.
So.
That looks like none to me.
Okay, no, I don't think I have any. Let me just see.
Right. Well, do you have any final words, Gordon?
Yes, I do. If anyone wants to reach me and have a conversation about our common humanity or coaching around this deeper understanding of the innate well-being or our own wisdom, they can reach me at gordonfaulkner.com, GordonFaulkner.com. My final words would just be what me and Imogen are talking about is something that really does cross many different territories of areas of life that have to do with well-being. So it's relationships, it's career, it's money, it's health and well-being. What we've both noticed, and what we've noticed in the people that we coach and the people we're in conversation with, is that the more present that we become to what's actually occurring in the moment, which is that we all think, that we're all conscious, and that we're all connected to this deeper wisdom or energy behind life. The more present we are to this, and for me, the less I try and mess with it through trying to fix things or change my past, the less I try and consciously mess with it, and the more I'm just present to what is in the moment, the better my life has been. It's changed dramatically. My health has improved, my relationships have improved, my decision making has improved, and for me, it seems that when we're in coaching conversation with people around this, we're not specifically trying to get an outcome for someone. But what seems to happen is there's huge side effects of having a conversation like this. People become more connected to their own wisdom. They become more self-reliant. They become more independent from their well-being. Becomes more independent from the circumstances in their life. And so I see the side effects that I see from having a conversation around this. They far outweigh trying to get one specific issue resolved or one specific goal achieved. The side effects are huge and positive and amazing. That's what I've seen, and those are my final words for this webinar. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I echo everything Gordon has said here, and I think to me, don't ever write yourself off on this. And one of the first people I helped had borderline personality disorder, the allegedly incurable one. And she made huge strides with it. She was feeling so much better. We both know another person who's got off diagnosis of drugs from that diagnosis. And these are dustbin diagnoses that, are alleged to be, for life you'll be miserable or whatever. It's just not true. So yeah, don't, it's a huge temptation to think that you would be the exception to this. Okay, but this is, as we talked earlier, that's about taking stuff personally rather than impersonally. You are a human being, it's not what you think, it's that you think, and you've taken that for granted all these years. I remember talking to a bunch of therapists once, and they were all kind of, oh, you've got to have something special and different techniques and all this. And I agree with them when they say you've got to talk to somebody in their own language. I agree with that. But the fact is, everyone thinks. And thus, this approach works. And that's how it works, is that it's something, there are some fundamentals in our humanity that whether you're black, white, green just before you're vomiting or whatever, this stuff still applies. Now, if you want to contact me, I'm at www.hopecatalyst.com. Catalyst spelled CATALYST.com. There's a blog if you want to start looking. Actually, Gordon's got some great stuff as well. It's just free, and so feel free to browse. Sometimes you just want to browse something, not necessarily talk to anyone. That's fine. That's fine if they've got resources available to you. And thank you very much for listening.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.